Good evening, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives. Thank you, everyone. So listen, 1 week from today, you will have the chance to make a decision that directly impacts your life, the life of your family, and the future of this country we love. And it will probably be the most important vote you ever cast. And this election is more than just a choice between two parties and two different candidates. It is a choice about whether we have a country rooted in freedom for every American or ruled by chaos and division. Many of you watching have probably already cast your ballots. But I know many others are still considering who to vote for, or whether you'll vote at all. So tonight, I will speak to everyone about the choice and the stakes in this election. Look, we know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election. An election that he knew he lost. Americans died as a result of that attack. 140 law enforcement officers were injured because of that attack. And while Donald Trump sat in the White House watching as the violence unfolded on television, he was told by his staff that the mob wanted to kill his own vice president. And Donald Trump responded with 2 words: so what? America, that's who Donald Trump is. And that's who is asking you to give him another 4 years in the Oval Office. Not to focus on your problems, but to focus on his. And Donald Trump has told us his priorities for a second term. He has an enemies list of people he intends to prosecute. He says that one of his highest priorities is to set free the violent extremists who insulted those law enforcement officers on January 6th. Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. Donald Trump has spent a decade trying to keep the American people divided and afraid of each other. That is who he is. But America, I am here tonight to say that is not who we are. That is not who we are. You see, what Donald Trump has never understood is that e pluribus unum, out of many, one, isn't just a phrase on a dollar bill. It is a living truth about the heart of our nation. Our democracy doesn't require us to agree on everything. In fact, we like good arguments from time to time. Just think of your own family, right? It's not the American way to not have disagreements. We don't shy away from robust debate. In fact, we like a good debate, don't we? We like a good debate. And the fact that someone disagrees with us does not make them the enemy within. They are family, neighbors, classmates, co-workers. They are fellow Americans. And as Americans, we rise and fall together. America, for too long, we have been consumed with too much division, chaos, and mutual distrust. And it can be easy then to forget a simple truth. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It is time to stop pointing fingers. We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States of America. Now look, let me say, I recognize this has not been a typical campaign. Even though I've had the honor of serving as your vice president for the last 4 years, I know that many of you are still getting to know who I am. Well, let me tell you, I am someone who has spent most of my career outside of Washington, D.C., so I know that not all the good ideas come from here. I am not afraid of tough fights against bad actors and powerful interests, because for decades, as a prosecutor and a top law enforcement officer of our biggest state, I won fights against big banks that ripped off homeowners, against for-profit colleges that scammed veterans and students, against predators who abused women and children, and cartels that trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. And I did this work because for as long as I can remember, I have always had an instinct to protect. There's something about people being treated unfairly or overlooked that frankly just gets to me. I don't like it. It's what my mother instilled in me, a drive to hold accountable those who use their wealth or power to take advantage of other people. The drive to protect hardworking Americans who aren't always seen or heard and deserve a voice. And I will tell you, that is the kind of president I will be. And look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But here's what I promise you. I will always listen to you, even if you don't vote for me. I will always tell you the truth, even if it is difficult to hear. I will work every day to build consensus and reach compromise to get things done. And if you give me the chance to fight on your behalf, there is nothing in the world that will stand in my way. So look, in less than 90 days, either Donald Trump or I will be in the Oval Office. Okay? On day one, if elected, Donald Trump would walk into that office with an enemies list. When elected, I will walk in with a to-do list. Full of priorities of what I will get done for the American people. And I will work with everyone, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, to help Americans who are working hard and still struggling to get ahead. I have been honored to serve as Joe Biden's vice president. But I will bring my own experiences and ideas to the Oval Office. My presidency will be different because the challenges we face are different. Our top priority as a nation 4 years ago was to end the pandemic and rescue the economy. Now, our biggest challenge is to lower costs that were rising even before the pandemic and that are still too high. I get it. I still remember our mother sitting at that yellow Formica table, late at night, cup of tea in hand, a pile of bills in front of her, trying to make it all work. And I've heard from so many of you who are facing even greater financial pressures. Donald Trump's answer to you is the same as it was the last time. Another $1 trillion in tax cuts for billionaires and big corporations. And this time, he will pay for it with a 20% national sales tax on everything you buy that is imported. Think about it. Clothes, food, toys, cell phones. A Trump sales tax that would cost the average family nearly $4,000 more a year. And on top of that, you will pay even more if Donald Trump finally gets his way and repeals the Affordable Care Act, which would throw millions of Americans off their health insurance and take us back to when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. Well, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back. Because we also know Donald Trump would deliver tax cuts to his billionaire donors. I will deliver tax cuts to working people and the middle class. I will make sure you have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. Because I believe in honoring the dignity of work. I will enact the first ever federal ban on price gouging on groceries. Cap the price of insulin and limit out-of-pocket prescription costs for all Americans. I will fight to make sure that hardworking Americans can actually afford a place to live. I'll never forget how our mother saved up and how excited she was when she could finally afford to buy our first home. I remember how excited she was. And I know that owning a home is not only a measure of financial security, it's about the pride of your hard work. And as president, I will fight to help first-time home buyers with your down payment, take on the companies that are jacking up rents, and build millions of new homes. For years, we have heard excuses about why America can't build enough housing. Enough with the excuses. I'm going to cut the red tape and work with the private sector and local governments to speed up building and get it done. And the cost of housing isn't the only financial pressure on middle-class families. I have met so many young people who have a natural desire to parent their children well, but not always the resources to do it. So I'll fight for a child tax credit to save them some money. which will also lift American children out of poverty. I'll work to lower the cost of childcare, which is out of reach for too many working families today. And for too many people in the sandwich generation who are raising young children and taking care of a parent, juggling all of it is extremely difficult. You know, I took care of my mother when she got sick, cooking food that she had a taste for, finding clothes that would not irritate her skin, and understand, as I do, that caregiving is about dignity. It is about dignity. And currently, if you need home care and you don't have some money to hire someone, you and your family need to deplete your savings to qualify for help. That's just not right. So we're going to change the approach and allow Medicare to cover the cost of home care so seniors can get the help and care they need in their own homes. Now, Donald Trump has a different approach. He tried to cut Medicare and Social Security every year he was president. Look, I believe that when people have worked hard their entire life, they deserve to retire with the benefits they have earned. And I believe in the fundamental freedom of Americans to make decisions about their own bodies and not have their government tell them what to do. I will fight to restore what Donald Trump and his hand-selected Supreme Court justices took away from the women of America. Today, 1 in 3 women in America, think about it, 1 in 3 women in America lives in a state with a Trump abortion ban. Many with no exceptions even for rape and incest. The idea that a woman who survives a crime of a violation to her body should not have the authority to make a decision about what happens to her body next, that is immoral. That is immoral, and Trump's not done. He would ban abortion nationwide, restrict access to birth control and put IVF treatments at risk, and force states to monitor women's pregnancies. Just Google Project 2025 and read the plans for yourself. And look, I think we all know one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to simply agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. Not the government. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom nationwide, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. Proudly. And look, on another subject, politicians have got to stop treating immigration as an issue to scare up votes in an election. And instead, treat it as the serious challenge that it is that we must finally come together to solve. I will work with Democrats and Republicans to sign into law the border security bill that Donald Trump killed. When I was Attorney General of a border state, I saw the chaos and violence caused by transnational criminal organizations that I took on. And when I am president, we will quickly remove those who arrive here unlawfully, prosecute the cartels, and give Border Patrol the support they so desperately need. At the same time, we must acknowledge we are a nation of immigrants. And I will work with Congress Congress to pass immigration reform, including an earned path to citizenship for hardworking immigrants like farm workers and our dreamers. As Commander-in-Chief, I will make sure America has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has shown his contempt for our nation's heroes, calls them suckers and losers, called a 4-star Marine general a, quote, lowlife. I will always honor, never denigrate, the service and sacrifice of our troops and their families, and fulfill our sacred obligation to care for them. I will strengthen, not surrender, America's global leadership. And I will stand with our friends because I know that our alliances keep American people safe and make America stronger and more secure. Look, world leaders think that Donald Trump is an easy mark. Easy to manipulate with flattery or favor. And you can believe that autocrats like Putin and Kim Jong-un are rooting for him in this election. I will always uphold our security, advance our national interest, and ensure that the United States of America remains, as we must forever be, a champion of liberty around the world. America, we know what Donald Trump has in mind. More chaos, more division, and policies that help those at the very top and hurt everyone else. I offer a different path, and I ask for your vote. And here is my pledge to you. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress. I pledge to listen to experts, to those who will be impacted by the decisions I make, and to people who disagree with me. Unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe people who disagree with me are the enemy. He wants to put them in jail. I'll give them a seat at the table. I pledge to you to approach my work with the joy and optimism that comes from making a difference in people's lives. And I pledge to be a president for all Americans. And to always put country above party and self. I love our country with all my heart. And I believe in its promise because I've lived it. I grew up as a child of the Civil Rights Movement. My parents would take me to marches in a stroller, where crowds of people of all races, faiths, and walks of life came together to fight for the ideals of freedom and opportunity. I've lived the promise of America. I saw how hard our mother worked to give her daughters the same chances this country gave her. Growing up, I was blessed to have family by blood and family by love, who instilled in me the values of community, compassion, and faith that have always defined our nation at its best. I've lived the promise of America. I've spent my life fighting for the people who have been hurt and counted out, but never stopped believing that in our country, anything is possible. I've lived the promise of America, and I see the promise of America in all of you. In all of you. I see it. I see it in the young people who are voting for the first time, who are determined to live free from gun violence and to protect our planet and to shape the world they inherit. I see it in the women who refuse to accept a future without reproductive freedom. And the men who support them. I see it in Republicans who have never voted for a Democrat before, but have put the Constitution of the United States over party. I've seen it in Americans different in many respects, but united in our pursuit of freedom, our belief in fairness and decency, and our faith in a better future. America, I know the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. I know it. And that's why I am in this race, to fight for the people, just like I always have. Nearly 250 years ago, America was born when we wrested freedom from a petty tyrant. Across the generations, Americans have preserved that freedom, expanded it, and in so doing, proved to the world that a government of, by, and for the people is strong and can endure. And those who came before us, the patriots at Normandy and Selma, Seneca Falls and Stonewall, on farmlands and factory floors, they did not struggle, sacrifice, and lay down their lives only to see us cede our fundamental freedoms. They didn't do that only to see us submit to the will of another petty tyrant. These United States of America, we are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators. The United States of America is the greatest idea humanity ever devised. A nation big enough to encompass all our dreams, strong enough to withstand any fracture or fissure between us, and fearless enough to imagine a future of possibilities. So America, let us reach for that future. Let us fight for this beautiful country we love. And in 7 days, we have the power, each of you has the power to turn the page and start writing the next chapter in the most extraordinary story ever told. I thank you all. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Vice President of the United States Kamala Harris, her husband, Doug Emhoff, on the Ellipse, the site, of course, of that infamous rally hosted by the last President of the United States, Donald Trump, right before he sent a violent mob to the Capitol to overthrow the constitutional order tonight. Kamala Harris appearing in front of what the campaign says are 75,000 supporters down in that same spot. There's overflow stretching back up towards the Washington Monument. You can see those pictures on social media. It may be more than 75,000 when everyone is counted. This 1 week before Election Day, in this consequential election, perhaps the most consequential that we have faced, at least in my lifetime. Vice President clocking in just around 30 minutes, making her closing arguments to the nation. She spoke for about 32 minutes. She laid out both the sort of Democratic stakes of this election, her contrast to Donald Trump's aspirations for petty and authoritarian power, and also the kind of meat and potatoes of an agenda that she and the campaign have been hammering all campaign long. As expected, of course, in this crucible of democracy, particularly given the stain upon it left by Donald Trump and his supporters, Harris touched on January 6th and Trump's threats to democracy.
We know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election. An election that he knew he lost. Americans died as a result of that attack. 140 law enforcement officers were injured because of that attack.
Joining me now, Rachel Maddow, host of The Rachel Maddow Show, Joy Reid, host of The Readout on MSNBC. We were speaking before the speech, and we got to see it. Rachel, your thoughts?
This is a damn good speech. This strikes me as essentially the bookend to her Democratic National Convention speech. Her acceptance of the Democratic Party's nomination hit some of these same lines, but she knew she was speaking to the Democratic Party and to those who had elevated her within that party. Tonight she was speaking to the whole country. She overtly asked for people's vote. She overtly reintroduced herself to the country. She said, I know a lot of people say they don't know enough about me. I'm paraphrasing, but she talked about her upbringing. She talked about having worked most of her career outside of Washington. And she ended with a big presidential flourish, a big presidential vision. Nearly 250 years ago, America was born when we wrested freedom from a petty tyrant. Across the generations, Americans have preserved that freedom and expanded it, and in so doing, proved to the world that a government of, by, and for the people is strong and can endure. The United States of America, she said, is not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators. The United States of America is the greatest idea humanity ever devised. She is not speaking to people who already support her there. She is speaking to people who may not have been inclined to vote for her, who may not have felt comfortable with her, who may not have felt like it was a worthy cause to get up off the couch and go vote for anybody. She's there to say, listen, I embody the future of this country, and the other guy embodies the end of the American democratic experiment. And it's worth voting for me because I will protect this country. And that is strength personified. She did a very good job delivering this speech, and I think it was probably the most important speech of her life thus far.
Joy.
Indeed. She said it is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and the division. It's time to turn the page to a new vision for America. I wrote that line down as well as the line that Rachel Maddow just read to you. This was an excellent speech, but what strikes me is that what she said, talking about herself being a child of the civil rights movement, her parents taking her to marches in a stroller. She described growing up and watching her mom work out the bills and figure out how to buy her first home and stand at that Formica yellow table. She described a middle-class upbringing, an approachable upbringing that people can relate to, a relatable person who talked about working for the people. She talked about her biography a bit. But I think what really struck me was not just the delivery of the speech, which to Rachel's point was very well done. The setting was iconic, with that cinematic look where you could sort of see the Capitol blurred behind her, the sort of beauty of the vision of it. But we stand at the brink of potentially electing our first woman president. We stand at the brink of doing something that Liberia was able to do, that Pakistan was able to do, that Israel, that England, but that we have not done, that Mexico just did. That we stand at the brink of that. And for the 75,000 some odd people who stood at the Ellipse, their memories of the Ellipse, their vision of the Ellipse will not be about January 6, 2021. It will be about being there tonight, listening to the daughter of immigrants say that the tyrant that we should oppose today is somebody who spurns immigrants, despite 2 of his 3 wives being immigrants, is somebody whose closing argument was to attack immigrants, to attack strivers, to attack dreamers, to attack the people who make our country great. And what she says is that America doesn't have to be made great. It is great. And it's great because of all of us. And regardless of party, it's great because of you. And so this ask for the vote, which is the primary job of a political candidate, I think this ask was put in terms that are both inspiring and fundamental to those of us. You know, we children of immigrants, we have a little bit of a rose-colored view of America. We kind of come with it. We're kind of born with it. It's sort of a thing that we get when we come out of the womb of our immigrant parent who came here on purpose. And I think whether you are somebody who came and became an American citizen on purpose, deliberately as an immigrant, or somebody whose lineage goes back all the way to the beginning and its flawed beginning, what Kamala Harris is saying, you're part of that mosaic. And so I think it was both her best speech, it was her most important speech, and the location of it made it literally iconic.
Yeah, and I think that part about the biography is interesting to me because it speaks to something that's distinct here, right? I mean, Joe Biden has one of the longest records in public life of anyone. In fact, he has this crazy sort of bookend, right? Elected at 29 and serving, youngest possible senator, oldest president, right? And spent decades building this sort of identity and brand, Scranton Joe, middle class, telling that story. Kamala Harris has not had that lifetime in the public eye. She is, she's vice president, is not the president. This sort of biographical question of like, why are you doing this? What are you in it for? Which she took time, again, 1 week before the election, having run only 100 days, right? In the strangest, wildest campaign that any of us have seen in our lifetime, to take some time to talk about that. I thought that was really interesting and very efficient how quickly and deftly they did that. But it was interesting that they want to send that message to folks that feel like, I still don't quite know you or what is animating you, Rachel, that this is what's animating me. Like, this is why I'm doing this.
I think they're reading the sort of, what's the phrase we're supposed to use now? That weird anecdata, right? It's not exactly data, but it's sort of more than anecdotes. Yeah. Certainly there are people who are diehard Trump supporters. Certainly there are people who are diehard Kamala Harris supporters. But when it comes to people who are neither strong supporters of either, and they have to decide what they're going to do in this election, whether they're going to vote and who for, you are anecdotally hearing, and a lot of that man of the street stuff, and a lot of those those surveys that allow people to do something other than just check yes or no, that their biggest concern about Kamala Harris is that they don't know much about her. And so even this late in her career, even as she's 60 years old and the serving vice president of the United States and was the attorney general of the biggest state in the country, and she was senator before she was vice president and all those things, and even as she has been campaigning for these months since President Biden dropped out, they recognize, I think, that people who are wavering and not sure what they're going to do or whether they're going to vote need to know more about her. And so this was her honoring that, meeting that in good faith and not being resentful about it, and not, coming up with a fairy tale about it, but being very real about it. I'll also just say in just very practical and perhaps slightly catty terms that Vice President Harris gives a good speech, but I feel like I know what the cadence and the sort of body language is of a Kamala Harris speech. This actually had a lot more texture to it. She was much less just the practiced Politico here. She was showing humanity, showing a little personality, showing a little humor, showing just a little bit more of a range of emotion. For women in the public eye, we all know that the range that you're allowed to express in terms of emotion and animation is about yay wide, but she's expanding beyond what I think has been a very tightly disciplined, buttoned up political messaging strategy and sort of messaging kind of cadence to her voice and everything, where we saw more of her and more of what her sort of the warmth of her personality is like. It's very hard to do without being judged for it in this culture that we have, but I think she did it tonight in a way that was ambitious and effective.
There was, again, I thought it was incredibly efficient use of a small amount of time to do a lot of things. And there's a few different arguments in the alternative here. One of them is about the future of American democracy. One of them is not even quite that weighty. And I think in some ways it's a really good argument for people that are pretty checked out, who don't necessarily think about things in terms of, like, are we going to be a democracy? Which just, like, shouldn't we just all move on from this? Like, wouldn't it be good? I really think it's a strong argument. Like, wouldn't it be good if we just weren't doing this still again another 4 years? I want to play that part because I actually think it's an incredibly effective argument if you're not someone who's sort of thinking about this in these kind of huge terms of democracy when she talks about America for too long has been consumed with too much division. Take a look.
America, for too long, we have been consumed with too much division, chaos, and mutual distrust. And it can be easy then to forget a simple truth. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It is time to stop pointing fingers. We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States.
You know, Joy, I don't know if there's a majority in the country or in the swing states for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. We're going to find that out. I feel quite certain there's a majority of just on the forced referendum, like, do you want to think more about Donald Trump or less? That there is genuinely a majority in the country. I don't know if that's going to be the votes, but that is part of the pitch here.
Yeah, I mean, there's an eye roll to it at this point, right? His act is getting old, and that line, new generation of leadership, I think that's key, because when you talk to younger people, they're not as partisan, and they're frustrated with the idea that a lot of what we spend time talking about, you know, when they watch us on YouTube, they don't really watch cable news, but wherever they're watching, they're just annoyed about the fact that you know, Democrats and Republicans are constantly fighting each other and not solving their problems, and I think that's really important that she got out. So just now to go back to her disciplined campaign person. Because yes, this was a much more effluent speech. It was a different kind of Kamala, but then she got back down to business. She said, I'm a new generation of leader. I'm not going to ignore somebody who doesn't agree with me. Even if you didn't vote for me, I'm going to listen to you and listen to all the ideas. Then she got to the stuff that's important, reducing costs. She said Donald Trump is going to do another $1 trillion in tax cuts for billionaires and big corporations. He's going to pay for it with a 20% national sales tax. One of Michael, we had Michael Tyler on earlier on my show when you guys were all with me. There's a job the comms director wants her to do. One of them is to get out and get people to understand this national sales tax, his tariff plan. She also says that he is looking to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which will throw tens of millions of Americans off their health insurance. That is a big deal to people who may not be paying a ton of attention, but might be tonight. She's talking about he's delivering tax cuts to billionaire donors. I'll deliver tax cuts to working people and the middle class. She also talked about making sure that working people, that dreamers would get an opportunity. I haven't heard her talk about dreamers. She talked about a pragmatic approach to immigration. So when she starts going through and ticking off the things that she would do, she talked about making it so that people could finally afford their first home and ending price gouging on groceries. I noted that because that is one of the big beefs that people who are open to Trump have, is how much things cost. So she got right to the idea that this new generation of ideas can help make your life affordable. And particularly for millennial voters and Trump open sort of Gen Zers, that is their big issue, the cost of things.
And there's that sort of substantive policy part of the speech. I want to talk about one other agenda in there in just a second. But this has been the message on the paid advertising. Like, that is the stuff they are hammering day in, day out. If you watch American football games as I do, you get a lot of that from both the super PAC associated with the Kamala Harris campaign as well. But also, I thought, Rachel, this idea of sort of democratic debate and disagreement, that like we're gonna not agree, people are gonna vote for me or not vote for me, I'm gonna be everyone's president. And this line about, she had in slide number 3 here, we're talking about the enemies list, and she kept talking about like, that's not, like, I want people to say different things. I understand that we're a fractious country, that people don't all agree, but I'm not gonna have an enemies list. Take a listen.
So look, in less than 90 days, either Donald Trump or I will be in the Oval Office. Okay? On day one, and on day one, if elected, Donald Trump would walk into that office with an enemies list. When elected, I will walk in with a to-do list. Full of priorities of what I will get done for the American people.
This is a theme, Rachel, just like he's thinking about himself and he wants vengeance, and I'm thinking about you, and I'm going to try to actually do stuff. And that really is that's where the kind of the substance and the policy and the character stuff come together, and this is the core argument.
Yeah, and you know, good politicians always make time during their campaign to say, I will work for you even if you don't vote for me. I'll be the senator for all of Pennsylvania, you know, or I'll be a president for all Americans. They always do some version of that. But in this environment, with Trump saying we have an enemy within against whom we need to use not just physical force, but U.S. military force, right? I mean, there's a Republican candidate for schools chief in North Carolina right now, who's a like super Trumpy schools chief Republican candidate, and she says that what she wants is publicized, televised executions of people like Barack Obama, right? Like this is the vibe that's coming from MAGA world, including their elected officials and their candidates for the highest offices. And so in that kind of environment, you can't just say, I'm going to be a president for everyone. Like, it's not enough. And so Vice President Harris tonight said, you know, I don't relish a country where we don't have debate, where we don't have arguments. We want arguments. We want debates. We believe, and I believe, that when people disagree about things and we can fairly work it out amongst ourselves, and we can each hear we can hear all sides of things. We can disagree vigorously. We'll come up with better policies. And not only will I listen to you, but I will not lock you up. And I would like you to have a seat at the table. And I mean, it's actually, I gotta say, I bristle at it a little bit. I just think, like, do you want people to have a seat at the table who are going to use their seat at the table to dismantle American democracy and install a dictatorship that never leaves? I don't know if they get a seat at the table, but she's saying they will, and that is a you know, Gerald Ford's pardon kind of message. That is a let's end this division kind of message. That is a it's not an us and them America kind of message. And I think it's, you know, maybe she's got smarter, better angels than I do, but that is a very moderate, responsible, big-hearted message that I think is probably a good strategic choice.
Yes, and moderation in tone and approach is a key theme here, and it's reflected by the fact that polling has shown people assess her as more liberal than she sort of actually is, right? It has a lot to do with her gender and her race, and people sort of the framework through which people view that. There's one more policy thing I just want to hit, because I think it's probably the most, in some ways, revolutionary seismic policy proposal of the campaign. Has not gotten as much as attention as probably deserved, but she talked about the idea of Medicare paying for home care for elderly folks. This is something that I just think tens of millions, if not more, Americans are dealing with in some way or the other. And it really would completely transform and revolutionize the way that people can conceive of care, the idea of like drawing down your savings so you can get onto Medicaid, which people do all the time, which is just a central financial challenge people face. Here she is talking about this home care agenda, slide number 5, about Medicare paying for that. Take a listen.
Currently, if you need home care and you don't have some money to hire someone, you and your family need to deplete your savings to qualify for help. That's just not right. So we're going to change the approach and allow Medicare to cover the cost of home care so seniors can get the help and care they need in their own homes. Now, Donald Trump has a different approach. He tried to cut Medicare and Social Security every year he was president. Look, I believe that when people have worked hard their entire life, they deserve to retire with the benefits they have earned.
So, the way this works now, home care is through Medicaid, which is a means-tested program, right? Originally designed for folks in poverty. What you have to do is become poor to get the Medicaid money. I mean, that's literally the incentive structure when she says deplete savings. It's not a universal social insurance program like Medicare and Social Security. This would be transformative on that score, and he's wildly popular in the polling I've seen, Joy.
Yeah, and look, I have two friends that are going through this right now, and we know a lot of people. And look, if you look at her poll, if you look at that latest ABC poll, for instance, it breaks down the way that she's performing, including in swing states and nationally, and you break it down by age. The generation she's performing the weakest with is my generation, Generation X. And so this is a message that is directed right at Generation X, who are a large part of the sandwich generation, and as well as older millennials who are now getting into that generation as well. If you are in your 50s, at this point, or late 40s, you might be caring both for children and still supporting children who, let's say, are in college, who you're still supporting financially, but also supporting an elder or dealing with elder care. It's incredibly expensive. Or if you have an injured family member that needs to go onto Medicaid, that the system is not designed for you, and it's so expensive that it's breaking people financially. And so I think this is an important sort of, as you said, it doesn't get as much attention, but it goes right to the amygdala of people for whom cost is the thing that's making them undecided, for whom the spending and the pressure on them, particularly after COVID, which made even work harder and more difficult to obtain, that's who she's talking to, because I think what she's understanding is a lot of the undecided are financial voters. They're voters who vote based on how much things cost them and who they assess as better for their pockets. And in this sense, she's saying, if you are in that sandwich generation, if you are Gen X or an older millennial, I'm the one who's going to make things costless and make it possible for you to be able to afford both elder care and child care.
All right. Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow, both of whom have pulled overtime tonight, and I am incredibly appreciative and grateful for you pulling overtime with me. It's a great joy to do that. Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thanks,
Chris.